Part 53. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 521. Well, Hong Yu coughed and walked beside Fuekang. Although you don't look that lovable, I don't understand why His Majesty would rather give up the 3 palaces and 6th courtyard and only favor you, who is completely boring. Man, for your Majesty's sake, I am willing to tell you some secrets. Fuekang was silent. The one who had a grudge against you in the past life was not your Majesty, but the original Chu Qing Huang. Hong Yu looked up at the darkening sky. According to the fate of this life, you should have been related to the original Chu Qing Huang for a lifetime. Although this life is very short, you will probably die young when you are 24 or 5 years old. Well, dying young is not appropriate for a shadow guard, but you can understand the meaning. Anyway, shadow guards are worthless in the eyes of those powerful people, worse than a piece of grass. If you follow your fate, Chu Qing Huang will only live for more than 20 years in this life. Just like you, he will have a short life. Hong Yu concluded. If my highness hadn't come to save you, you and Chu Qing Huang would the original body can be regarded as a love that will last until death. Will we stay together and kill each other until death? Fuekang's expression suddenly became difficult to explain. It doesn't seem right to say that. Hong Yu thought for a moment and curled his lips and said, it should be that the original Chu Qing Huang abused you unilaterally, and you can't even resist. Fu looked at him expressionlessly and remained silent. But I can't blame you. After all, the former Fuekang couldn't be considered a normal person at all. At most, he was just a sharp weapon who was trained to be emotionless. Hong Yu said, it was my Majesty who taught you the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Fuekang was still silent. After confirming that he had no previous grudges with His Majesty, the only worry he had disappeared. Fuekang was in a good mood at the moment and didn't care what Hong Yu said about him. Meeting your Majesty in this life is a blessing you earned in your previous life. You can't even repay it with all your heart and mind, Hong Yu said, so the most important thing in your life is to make His Majesty happy and successful. If you dare to let His Majesty down, believe me, it's just too much to wish for a happy death. Fuekang pursed his lips. Such a thing won't happen. It's okay if it doesn't happen. The two of them arrived at Changming Palace without saying anything else. Chu Qing Huang sat in front of the window and read a book. After finishing the political affairs, it was her rest time to read a book and relax her thoughts. Your Majesty. Yuan Bao saw Hong Yu and Fuekang walking together and reminded him respectfully, Lord Hong Yu is here. Chu Qing Huang hummed, indicating that he knew. Hong Yu walked into Changming Palace and bowed, Your Majesty. Chu Qing Huang raised her hand to signal him to sit down, and signaled Yuan Bao to step back. Do you know why I summoned you? Hong Yu walked over and sat down on the stool diagonally opposite Chu Qing Huang. I probably know something about it. Your Majesty wants to ask about the past life. I just had a conversation with the Emperor's husband, Hong Yu said, with a melancholy expression on his face. Actually, I think that although things in the past life are not important, you should still enjoy yourself in time in this life. Your Majesty, you are doing your best. The king of a country can naturally own 3 palaces and 6 courtyards, and enjoy all the beautiful men in the world. A stern gaze from the side, mixed with the whoosh of cold wind, shot towards him like an arrow. Chu Qing Huang's voice was lazy, are you here as a lobbyist for the ministers? Hong Yu ignored the intimidating gaze and shook his head calmly, no. Although my current status is not inferior to that of men, there is still no way for men to complete the task of giving birth to children. Chu Qing Huang picked up the teacup, took a sip of tea, and raised his eyes to look at Hong Yu, or do you have a way? Hong Yu's expression paused, a man gives birth to a child. What if? Hong Yu quickly found her voice, Your Majesty owns 3 palaces and 6 courtyards, and you don't necessarily have to favor everyone. You can choose a few that you like best, or which man is particularly outstanding, and your Majesty can favor him a few more times. it is best to only favor one person during that period of time, so that the child born will know that his biological father is. The more Fukang listened, the more he couldn't stand it anymore. He reached out and grabbed the back of his neck, forcibly carried him and threw him out. Get out. Hong Yu turned over several times in embarrassment on the palace steps before landing safely on the ground. He raised his head and glared at Fukang. The emperor's side husband is too presumptuous. Don't be lawless just because his majesty favors you. I tell you dash. A dark shadow flashed before his eyes, and a strong murderous aura rushed towards his face. Hong Yu knew something was wrong, so she turned around and ran away. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 522. Chu Qing Huang sat in front of the window and watched, with the corners of his lips raised slightly, and he took a slow sip of tea. Fukang walked to Chu Qing Huang's side, looked at the smile on the corner of her mouth, and couldn't help lowering her head and kissing her. Your Majesty is very happy. Good. I'm very happy too. Fukang's voice was low, and he felt relieved. Hong Yu's cultivation level is much higher than that Dongling Chen. Really? Chu Qing Huang smiled lightly. Are you sure? Sure. Fukang nodded affirmatively. He can calculate my fate, but Dongling Chen can't. It's not necessarily that Dongling Chen couldn't figure it out, but he kept it secret. Chu Qing Huang patted the place next to him and motioned for Fukang to sit down. No matter what he wants to do, I have no interest in cooperating. After a pause, since I can sit in the position of the king of a country, it is enough to prove that my life is precious and hard. He is a fortune teller. Even if he really wants to control the king's life, it is just his wishful thinking. Fukang nodded repeatedly. Your Majesty is right. Hong Yu is actually very kind to you, Chu Qing Huang said. Although he always yells at you, he is actually not ambiguous at all when he should help you. Fukang was silent, nodded slowly and said, Your Majesty is right. What's going on between him and Duan Muogui recently? Do they have mutual admiration for each other? Fukang shook his head. I haven't heard anything in the past 2 days. Chu Qing Huang smiled lightly. If we are destined, we will get together sooner or later. If we are not destined, that's it. With Hong Yu's out-of-the-way temperament, it is not easy to fall in love. Fukang looked at her face for a moment. His dark pupils seemed to be soaked in the gentle and watery moonlight. Nuan Nuan. Huh. Chu Qing Huang raised her eyes and noticed his deep and tender eyes. Why are you looking at me like this? Kuyu said something very right. What did he say? Meeting Nuan Nuan in this life is a blessing from my previous life. Fukang narrowed his eyes. My most important responsibility in this life is to make Nuan Nuan happy, smooth, happy, and healthy. Chu Qing Huang's expression was subtle. It seems that you and Hong Yu are also very close to each other. Fukang chuckled, stretched out his hand to take her into his arms. I don't fall in love with him, I only fall in love with Nuan Nuan. Okay, let's get tired of it tonight. Chu Qing Huang patted his head. I'm hungry, let them prepare dinner. Fukang took her hand, put it to his lips and kissed it. As you command, my queen. After saying that, he reluctantly got up and walked out, giving instructions to Yuan Bao. A dazzling array of dinner was quickly prepared, and before long, the table was full. However, when Chu Qing Huang stood up and walked to the dining table, she suddenly covered her mouth and walked quickly towards the inner room. The palace people were immediately at a loss. Your Majesty, Fukang's expression changed, and he followed him in 3 steps at a time, shouting urgently, Come here. Call for a doctor. Minjiao handed over the golden bowl with quick eyes and hands. Chu Qing Huang vomited for a while, and the others immediately reacted and quickly brought water for His Majesty to wash up. For a time, everyone in the palace surrounded Chu Qing Huang. There had never been such a large-scale mobilization of troops in the Changming Palace. Fukang looked at her in shock. Your Majesty. After Chu Qing Huang rinsed her mouth and face, she looked at Fukang quietly, I'm fine, but I probably won't be able to get tired of you tonight. The palace people lowered their eyebrows and lowered their eyes. Fukang stepped forward to support her, not paying attention to the matter of whether or not you were tired. He was filled with anxiety. What's wrong with you? Did you have a bad stomach? The imperial doctor will be here soon. He had just boasted that he would make her happy and healthy throughout her life, but in the blink of an eye. Don't worry, Chu Qing Huang turned around and walked to the couch to sit down. He took a few sips of the warm water handed over by Jinlan. It should be a good thing. Good thing? Fukang was startled, not knowing where the good news came from. Jinlan, take all the non-vegetarian food off the table, Chu Qing Huang ordered, just leave a few light vegetarian dishes. Yes. Fukang was still uneasy. Nuan. It's okay, Chu Qing Huang smiled and said in a nonchalant tone, maybe you are going to be a father. Fukang was startled and didn't react for a long time. Your Majesty may be happy, Jinlan stood by and said respectfully, but we still have to wait for the imperial doctor to come and take his pulse before we can confirm whether it is. Your Majesty is indeed overjoyed by this reaction, Minjiao said with a smile. Your Majesty, you should not be too tired in the future. You should pay more attention to rest and rest peacefully for a few months. Fukang listened blankly, feeling as if he was dreaming. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 523. The imperial doctor arrived quickly, with messy footsteps and panicked looks, and a dozen people poured into Changming Palace together. I will pay your respects to your Majesty. What's wrong with Her Majesty the Queen? Is the dragon body in bad condition? This is the first time that His Majesty has invited an imperial physician since he took the throne more than 2 years ago. In addition, he was closed to rest for no reason some time ago. The imperial physicians were in a state of anxiety. Chu Qing Huang said calmly, no need to be polite, I have some symptoms of discomfort and call you to come and check my pulse. So the imperial doctors took turns stepping forward to check His Majesty's pulse. After checking the pulse, the uneasy expressions on each of their faces faded away, and they all looked relieved. It doesn't matter if you tell me what your symptoms are, Chu Qing Huang said calmly. Several imperial doctors exchanged the results of their respective pulse diagnoses, and then the chief of the imperial hospital respectfully replied, congratulations to your Majesty, your Majesty is very happy. Chu Qing Huang nodded slowly, with an expected expression, thank you for your hard work. Fukang asked, what should I pay attention to? In the first 3 months, pay attention to rest. You must not use violence or violent actions, nor can you get angry easily. Anger will harm your body. You must keep your emotions calm and don't be overjoyed or sad. In terms of diet, the minister will write down some taboo foods, including meat and vegetables, so that the palace people can pay attention to them. Fukang wrote down one by one, do you need anti-fetal medicine? Dr. Lu shook his head, your Majesty is in strong health and has a stable pulse. He does not need anti-fetal medicine. Fukang frowned slightly, and wanted to ask something else, but he really didn't know anything about women's pregnancy, and he didn't know where to start. I will come here to ask for pulse every day from now on. The emperor's side husband does not need to be too nervous. Dr. Lu noticed that he was in a restless mood and comforted him, your Majesty is young and has a strong body. His daily diet and daily life are carefully taken care of by the palace staff. Nothing will happen. Fukang turned to look at Chu Qing Huang. It's okay, don't worry. Chu Qing Huang smiled faintly, the doctor should go back first. Yes. I will take my leave. The imperial doctors came in large numbers with an uneasy mood, and left with a relaxed mood. As long as Her Majesty the Queen is fine, they gave us a false alarm. But having said that, Her Majesty the Queen became pregnant not long after she made her husband the Emperor. It seems that the husband will soon have to rely on his father to secure his position. I don't know if I can be promoted to the main palace. The Changming Palace was quiet for a while, and Yuan Bao quickly spoke sweetly, "Congratulations to Her Majesty the Queen, congratulations to Her Majesty the Queen." Other palace people immediately followed suit, "Congratulations to Her Majesty the Queen, congratulations to Her Majesty the Queen." Chu Qinghuang waved his hand and said in a much gentler tone, "Everyone, please go down and let me and the Emperor's husband stay quietly for a while." "Yes. I'm retiring." Yuan Bao accepted the order and was about to lead the palace people out when he suddenly thought of something. "Your Majesty." Chu Qinghuang raised his eyes. Yuan Bao hesitated. "Due to Your Majesty's decree, the female historian did not record the Emperor's husband's bedtime. But now that Your Majesty is happy, the matter has to be recorded in the book. How do you think this should be recorded?" Chu Qinghuang looked at Fukang. "How do you think it should be remembered?" "Follow the rules," Fukang said. Chu Qinghuang was silent for a moment and said casually, "Don't forget it, Fukang and I are a legitimate couple. Apart from Fukang, there will not be another man in the harem. So no matter how many children we have in the future, they will all be together. There is only one father." Yuan Bao's heart was slightly shaken, and he quickly responded, "Yes. I have written it down." The palace people retreated, and Fukang sat silently beside Chu Qinghuang. Nuan. Actually, it doesn't matter if you follow the rules and register." Chu Qinghuang raised his eyebrows. "You mean, I can continue to add more people to my harem in the future?" Fukang shook his head quickly. "That's not what I meant." "Then what do you mean?" Chu Qinghuang asked calmly. "The registration of bed attendants is a rule set by emperors in the past dynasties to prevent their concubines from leaving Hongxing. Only by having records of bed attendants can we ensure that the blood of the child is pure. Mine, the child is in my belly. I still don't know whether he is my child or not." Fukang was speechless. "Besides, you and I both know when you will go to bed and when I will be happy. This child is yours and mine." Chu Qinghuang pinched his face. "It is unnecessary to record anything." After a pause, "Besides, if you want Hongxing to cheat on you, it's useless to record the sleeping arrangements. You stay in my dormitory tonight, and you can still have sex with other women tomorrow." "I can't." Fukang frowned. "If I do, you can break my legs." Chu Qinghuang chuckled. "Which leg will I break?" After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 524. Fukang was stunned, and then subconsciously said, "Both legs are broken." Chu Qinghuang smiled sullenly. Nuan, why are you laughing?" Fukang looked at her in confusion, but seeing her smiling happily, the corners of her mouth couldn't help but raise. "What I said is funny." Chu Qinghuang thought about it seriously. "No, it's because the arrival of a little life makes me happy, so I can't help but laugh." "Yeah." Fukang looked at her suspiciously, feeling that the joyful smile seemed different. Chu Qinghuang coughed and said calmly, "Are you happy that you are going to be a father?" Happy? Fukang took a moment to realize the fact that he had become a father. His mood was a bit complicated. He couldn't tell whether he was happy or shocked, but it just felt a little unreal. "I never thought that one day I would be a father." "He will also become a father." Chu Qinghuang smiled slightly and touched his head. "You can think about it now." Fukang slowly put his arms around her waist. "I never even thought about how long I could live, get married and have children, stay with the person I like, and grow old together. For people like us, it is an indispensable person. The fantasy of luxury. It can even be said that there is no fantasy, because there is no such cognition in their minds. However, these things that he had never dared to think about before happened one by one in just 3 years, gradually enriching his originally lonely and gloomy life. Nuan Nuan, Fukang whispered, all of this is so beautiful that I feel uneasy. I feel that God has given me too much. If one day he takes all of this away, I may not know how to bear it. What are you talking about? Chu Qing Huang raised her hand and patted his shoulder gently, as if comforting an insecure child. God has given you all this. As long as you don't throw it away on your own initiative, it won't be taken away. But there are no buts, these are the compensations given to you by God, Chu Qing Huang said warmly. As the Prince of Yangguo, even if you can't guide the country, you should still have a wealthy life with clothes to stretch out your hands and food to open your mouth. Someone deliberately destroyed all of this and took away the life that originally belonged to you. Now God will give you everything you should have and make some compensation for what was owed to you before. Fukang felt warmed by her words, and her uneasy mood because she had received too much finally calmed down a little. Nuan Nuan. Fukang lowered his head to avoid her gaze, and his ears were quietly stained with a blush. What do you want to say? I will love you forever. Fukang was thinking this in his heart, but his handsome face was hot and red as if it was on fire. What on earth do you want to say? Chu Qing Huang frowned and looked at him displeased. You are hesitant, who could get used to this problem of yours? Fukang bit his lip lightly, and his voice seemed to be held back from his throat. You, for the rest of your life. Chu Qing Huang looked up at the ridge of the palace. She really couldn't bear that he was so thin-skinned, so she directly said for him, do you want to love me forever? Fukang was stunned for a moment, and then he nodded slowly like a turtle, yes. Look at your potential, Chu Qing Huang sneered. Didn't you just spout sweet words out of your mouth before? When you talk about nice things, you have a whole list of nice things to say. Why can't you hold back just one sentence for a long time? Fukang lowered his head and reflected, my fault. If you can't say it clearly, just say it a few times until it becomes smoother, Chu Qing Huang said calmly. Say it again. Fukang was confused. What did you say? That sentence I just couldn't hold back for a long time. Fukang Jun's face turned red again, and he whispered, I will love you forever. Say it again. I love Nuan Nuan all my life. Fukang kissed her face and then her lips. The words of love went smoothly and he blurted out naturally, only follow Nuan Nuan's fate and never leave her for the rest of her life. The corner of Chu Qing Huang's mouth raised, isn't this very smooth? Fukang was stunned and held her tightly in his arms. Master and mistress have arrived in the imperial capital and have been living in a separate courtyard for a while. Should we tell them the good news? Father may hit your legs, Chu Qing Huang said calmly, and then added, both legs will be broken. Fukang. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 525. Whether or not his legs would be broken, this news could not be concealed. After all, the imperial physician had already checked his pulse, and the palace maids in Changming Palace also knew the good news. Even if Chu Qing Huang and Fukang did not tell her, Yu would soon know it. So the next morning, Her Majesty once again announced a 3-day absence from court, and ordered all memorials to be sent to Changming Palace. If there were urgent matters that needed to be reported in person, the imperial concubine would be asked to handle them. Although no clear reason was given for the absence from court this time, the ministers could understand it. After all, news in the palace had always spread very fast. As long as it was not a secret that was deliberately concealed, the ministers could not hide the slightest movement. The ministers had heard that Her Majesty summoned the imperial physician to check her pulse last night and confirmed that she was pregnant. On the way to the palace in the morning, after a while of whispering, they basically knew everything they should know. So the absence from court was not surprising. The ministers accepted the order without objection, and suppressed their dissatisfaction with the selection yesterday. Originally, they were planning to admonish Her Majesty at the morning court and give some opinions on the selection. They wanted to ask Her Majesty what the criteria for selecting the imperial husband were and why those people were eliminated yesterday. However, they did not expect Her Majesty to have good news so soon. The ministers were caught off guard. Thinking that there was only one imperial concubine in the harem for the time being, there was no need to ask whose child Her Majesty was pregnant with. But being pregnant at this time was obviously not good news to be happy about for some ministers with ideas, because it meant that the selection would come to an end again. At least they might not consider this issue again within a year. The ministers had different ideas in their minds, but Chu Qinghuang had no time to pay attention to their ideas. After breakfast, he ordered Chu Xuanyi to select the imperial guards and leave the palace in a sedan chair. There was no bright yellow ceremonial guard, no canopy and feather fan, just an ordinary sedan chair, escorted by 100 imperial guards, all the way to the villa where Rongyu and Nan 11 were staying temporarily. Rongyu and Nan 11 had already heard the news and were thinking about what excuse to go to the palace to see her, but they didn't expect Chu Qinghuang and Fu Kang to arrive at the other courtyard. The emperor was overjoyed to hear that his daughter had arrived. Before he finished his meal, he hurriedly took concubine Xian to greet her. Qinghuang. Concubine Xian smiled at Chu Qinghuang and bowed, "Your Majesty." Chu Qinghuang looked at the scene in front of her and didn't know who to call first for a moment. After thinking for a while, she said, "I have something important to tell you. Go sit down in the hall first." The emperor's eyes fell on Chu Qinghuang's face and looked her up and down. "You are becoming more and more like a king of a country. This demeanor and majesty are almost the same as when I was a king." As soon as these words came out, Rongyu and Nan 11's expression suddenly became subtle. Even concubine Xian looked at him with complicated eyes, wondering how he could say this without changing his expression. Chu Qinghuang looked calm. "Father, you are too kind." The concubine Xian took the hand of the retired emperor and turned to the main hall. "How are you recently? Are you feeling unwell?" Nan 11 held her daughter's hand and asked in a low voice, "Should we put Ling Chuan in the imperial hospital temporarily so that we can take care of him?" Chu Qinghuang shook her head. "Don't worry about me, mother. There are no symptoms yet, but she can't stand the smell of greasy meat. Ling Chuan will stay in the ticket office first. The imperial doctors in the palace are also very reliable, so don't be too nervous." Nan 11 nodded. "Let's keep the process of the wedding ceremony in August simple. Everyone who should come will come, but the process can be simplified. It's too complicated and your body can't bear it?" Chu Qinghuang nodded. "Don't worry, mother, I won't use the child to show off." The retired emperor and the concubine Xian walked in front and entered the hall first. Nan 11 and Chu Qinghuang lagged behind one step, and the mother and daughter talked in a low voice. Rongyu walked behind and glanced at Fu Kang. Fu Kang felt pressured by him and almost wanted to apologize, but Rongyu said lightly, "Are you ready to protect her for the rest of her life?" Fu Kang was startled, then nodded slowly, "Yes. Protecting her means not only protecting her, but also protecting your children and her kingdom." Rongyu's voice was calm, but full of an unignorable sense of oppression. "If you take a wrong step, you won't even have room for regret." Fu Kang pursed his lips. "Master, don't worry, I won't give myself the opportunity to regret. I will protect her and our children for the rest of her life." Rongyu looked at Chu Qinghuang, who walked into the main hall, and said lightly, "If your child is too dull, or inherits the stupid traits of the Ziki royal family, you can give it to me to raise." As soon as these words came out, Fu Kang's expression froze, and he didn't know how to reply for a moment. Inherit the stupid traits of the Ziki royal family? This doesn't seem impossible. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300 x 250, placement, Below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 526. The group entered the hall quickly. Before Rong Yu and Nan 11 could speak, the Supreme Emperor couldn't wait to look at Chu Qinghuang's belly. Are you happy? Qinghuang is pregnant with my grandson. Is there a successor to the Ziki royal family? Boy. Girl. How many months? Rong Yu glanced at him expressionlessly, walked aside, and sat down. Nan 11 couldn't help laughing as she listened to the abdicated emperor setting off firecrackers as he asked questions one after another. The imperial doctor has just diagnosed her, and the child is still young. The Supreme Emperor was silent for a moment, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. This was true, he was too impatient. Several people took their seats on the chairs and began to discuss the children's issues. It was still the Supreme Emperor who spoke first and asked, "Whose child is it?" Chu Qinghuang looked at him silently, "Mine." The Emperor frowned, "I mean, who is his father?" Chu Qinghuang pointed at Fukang, "My Emperor's side husband." The Supreme Emperor turned to look at Fukang, who was standing next to Chu Qinghuang, and narrowed his eyes slightly. "It looks familiar." "Of course it looks familiar." Chu Qinghuang used to take Fukang with her wherever she went. Anyone who paid a little attention would know the shadow guard next to her, but most of the time, many people wouldn't pay too much attention to it. "He used to be my shadow guard." The Supreme Emperor was shocked and found it unbelievable. "You appointed a shadow guard as the Emperor's husband?" Chu Qinghuang nodded casually, as if this was not a big deal. Is it against the rules?" After a long while, the Supreme Emperor hesitated and said, "The ministers don't object. Rules are dead, people are alive. There is nothing that is against the rules." No one in the civil and military circles of the dynasty dared to object. Chu Qinghuang took a sip of tea and said in a very calm tone, "Fukang is the person I like, and he treats me wholeheartedly. Loyalty is a lesson to the world, and it is most cost-effective to make him the Emperor's husband." Fukang nodded silently. It was indeed the most cost-effective. The Supreme Emperor fell silent for a moment, then nodded slowly, "Domineering. It shouldn't be strange. This daughter has been so strong and domineering for a day or two. Now she is the king of a country, with great power in her hands. She really doesn't need to look at the minister's face to be made an imperial concubine or something." Thinking of this, the Supreme Emperor, who just a moment ago said that Chu Qinghuang looked very similar to him when he was young, suddenly felt that he could not match his daughter's momentum even though he was trying to flatter her. "The shadow guards are not bad either," the Supreme Emperor said. "They are loyal and have strong martial arts skills. They can also protect you at critical moments." Fukang stood with lowered eyebrows and lowered his eyes, silently adding in his heart that he was not only loyal, but also had a profound love for Nuan Nuan. Naturally, the Supreme Emperor couldn't hear Fukang's thoughts, and quickly said, "I heard that you selected yesterday. How many did you select?" "Father, it seems that the information is not very well informed." Chu Qinghuang smiled faintly. "No one was selected. Among the 16 people, it seems that no one is as pleasing to the eye as Fukang." When the Supreme Emperor heard this, he couldn't help but look at Fukang again and looked at it carefully. "The appearance is good, the demeanor is not bad, the appearance and posture are all excellent, handsome and elegant, like the orchid and jade tree. The look on his face is calm and calm, which is a perfect match for him standing next to Qinghuang. With such a person with outstanding appearance and demeanor standing in front of him, it is normal for other young masters from aristocratic families not to see him. However, 16 people? At least a few hundred people should enter the palace for the selection. He frowned and looked at Chu Ching Huang with strange eyes. What kind of flowers can 16 people choose? At least 100 people participated in the selection together, with all kinds of looks and temperaments. If you have them all, you'll have the chance to choose the one that suits your taste. Chu Ching Huang thought for a while and gave a more acceptable reason. Although Ziki has gotten better and better in the past 2 years, it is not strong enough compared to other countries. I don't want to waste time on my children's affair. The emperor was speechless. Besides, there are enough close friends, so why do we need so many people? Chu Ching Huang seemed to be more rational than everyone present, jealous and scheming. If they really enter the palace, it will only cause the ministers in the court to form cliques. And made the court a mess. I'm not that stupid. The Supreme Emperor was speechless for a long time. He didn't know if it was his misunderstanding. He always felt that King Huang's words seemed to be criticizing Huai. Although there were not too many of the 3 palaces and 6 courtyards in his past, there were still quite a few. The concubines were jealous, the princes were scheming, and the ministers were forming cliques, which indeed made the court a mess. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 527. The Supreme Emperor coughed lightly. The Emperor's 3 palaces and 6 courtyards should be there. Your Majesty, concubine Xian reminded him unhurriedly, you have abdicated, so you don't have to worry about Her Majesty the Queen's affairs. When Her Majesty the Queen Dongling was on the throne, there were not so many royal wives. Dongling is not still as strong as ever. The Supreme Emperor choked and was speechless for a moment, and subconsciously turned his head to look at Rongyu and Nan 11. Rongyu and his wife sat aside leisurely, not participating in their discussion, and had no special reaction to concubine Xian's words. The son-in-law has already met his father-in-law and his mother-in-law, and the Emperor of Ziki is still here to discuss whether it is in line with the rules. They are afraid of spoiling his interest by getting involved. Ahem. The Supreme Emperor cleared his throat. The regent is also King Huang's elder. I wonder what you think of her harem. Children will have their own blessings. I don't have any ideas. Rongyu took a sip of tea and said calmly, after 11 and I abdicated, we never interfered with Dongling government affairs, and we did not even participate in the lifelong affairs of our 2 sons. Interference, what should be worried about should not be worried about, let them go. The Emperor fell silent. Does this mean that he doesn't have to worry? The regent is so open-minded that it's hard not to admire him. Concubine Xian said with a smile, in the past 2 years since I left Ziki, the Emperor and I have been to many places and found that Ziki still has many problems. Away from the prosperity in remote places in the capital, where the Emperor cannot see for a while, there are many cases of collusion between officials and businessmen, oppressing the people, and harboring filth and evil. We still need to work hard in the Qingming dynasty. The Emperor has a heavy responsibility and really should not waste time on the personal affairs of his children. Superior. Nan 11 nodded, we still need to work hard in the Qingming dynasty. I strongly agree with this sentence. No matter how sage the Emperor is, he cannot make the world clean and stain-free. Concubine Xian sighed, the world is so big and the territory is vast, there are always places that the Emperor cannot see. People's hearts are fickle, and there are many people who pursue interests. Today's upstarts in the court who are passionate about serving the country and the people may become tomorrow's corrupt officials. Suck at the people, so the Emperor has a long way to go. Nan 11 hummed, the Emperor needs to be diligent in his administration. Even if it cannot be perfect, he must try his best to let most people see the Qingming dynasty. The Supreme Emperor was speechless. Maybe this is the difference between Ziki and Dongling? The emperor, who also abdicated the throne, discussed the queen's choice of husband as soon as he came back, but what Her Majesty the Queen saw was the common people in the world. Same identity, different mind and vision. Of course, what impressed him the most was that concubine Xian had changed a lot in the past 2 years. She was able to talk about the world with Her Majesty Queen Dongling, and the two women seemed to be talking harmoniously together. The Supreme Emperor was a little ashamed. I finally understand why Dongling has become so powerful these years. Nan 11 was slightly stunned, then smiled calmly. The Supreme Emperor is quite remarkable. He was able to withstand the pressure from all parties and the opposition of the civil and military ministers of the Manchu dynasty and resolutely establish Qing Huang as the emperor. Such courage and decisiveness are equally admirable. The Supreme Emperor was humble. That's because Qing Huang is very powerful. It is because Qing Huang is so powerful that the Supreme Emperor's persistence is so valuable, Nan 11 said, because the Supreme Emperor has also seen her abilities and is thinking about the people of the world. Otherwise, how could he risk everyone's opposition to do something like this, such a decision? The emperor was speechless. Although he understood that these were just polite words, he still felt quite happy. After all, who doesn't like to hear something good? Besides, I can probably count on 5 fingers the number of people who can be praised by Queen Dongling herself, especially when the other person praises her in such a gentle and kind tone, without any pretense at all. No wonder the Prince Regent has been obsessed with her for so many years. Who wouldn't like such a considerate woman? The Supreme Emperor thought of his former queen and concubines and sighed deeply. Comparing people to each other makes people angry. Qing Huang Nan 11 turned to look at her daughter. Would you like to stay here for lunch? Chu Qing Huang shook his head. I want to return to the palace early. There are quite a lot of twists and turns today. You are pregnant now, so don't work too hard, Nan 11 said. Since Fukang is already your husband, let him do what he has to do. If there is something that happens to the emperor, he will do his duty. Don't let him do it willing to use it. Fukang pursed his lips. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 528. Nan 11's tone was still calm. In the 2 years since you abdicated the throne and traveled around the world, Fukang became Rong Yu's disciple. The emperor's expression became more and more surprised. Why? The regent who abdicated the throne in Dongling would actually accept a shadow guard as his disciple? And Fukang's skills are the best among the Anj shadow guards, right? Do you need to go out of your way to become a disciple? It seems that he has discovered many things that he didn't know in the past 2 years. It's easy to say, Chu Qing Huang said indifferently. I wanted Fukang to be the emperor's husband, but apart from being good at martial arts, Fukang was not good at other things, so he asked his father to take him over and teach a few people. Months later, I learned some other skills. When the Supreme Emperor heard this, his first feeling was that he felt a little sour in his heart. His little cotton-padded jacket called other men father, and he did so smoothly. However, he quickly comforted himself. It must be because Rong Yu accepted Fukang as his apprentice, and Qing Huang was grateful to him, so he called him father instead of foster father. This thought passed through his mind, and the Supreme Emperor quickly thought of another key question. He frowned and looked at Chu Qing Huang. So, when you first ascended the throne, you planned to make Fukang your imperial husband? Chu Qing Huang nodded. Yes. The Supreme Emperor. The little cotton-padded jacket seems to be leaking a little. He, the father, didn't even know that his daughter fell in love with a shadow guard. I'm going back first. Seeing that something was wrong, Chu Qing Huang decided to retreat first. Last night, the imperial doctor told me that you must rest in the first few months of pregnancy. You can't be overjoyed or sad, and your mood can't fluctuate too much, so I decided stay in Changming Palace and have a good rest, and cultivate your relationship with the emperor's husband calmly. I won't leave the palace to see you in the near future. Let's wait until the wedding ceremony in August. With that said, he stood up and prepared to leave. It's time to go back and have a good rest. Nan 11 put down the teacup, stood up and warned, just don't work too hard anyway. Chu Qing Huang nodded in agreement, don't worry, mother, I will take care of myself. Several people explained some precautions in detail, asking her to pay attention to her body, and then Chu Qing Huang and Fukang were able to leave. Her father and mother, the Supreme Emperor and concubine Xian escorted them outside the gate. The two of them walked out of the gate of the other courtyard, got on the sedan, and headed towards the palace under the guard of the imperial army. The Supreme Emperor stood at the gate, looking at the team that was getting further away. The more he thought about it, the more he felt something was wrong. August wedding ceremony. Concubine Xian turned to look at him, puzzled, what happened to the wedding ceremony? Isn't the marriage ceremony between Qing Huang and the Crown Prince of Yan Kingdom? Then why did she just say that one close person is enough? The Supreme Emperor frowned, and she is pregnant now. Before the royal husband arrived, if you get pregnant with your side husband's child first, will it be seen as a lack of respect for your main husband? Rong Yu glanced at him expressionlessly. I see that King Huang's preference for Fukang is very unusual. I won't fight with the Crown Prince of Yan Kingdom. By then the more the Supreme Emperor thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. What did Qing Huang think? Since she doesn't like any of the sons of the Ziki family, so why would she think of marrying with Yang Guo? I didn't ask her just now what she thought. Yang Guo is just a small country, and it doesn't seem worthy of her to go out of her way to marry. The Supreme Emperor Nan 11 came over, smiled and raised her hand, let's have a meal together at noon. Rong Yu and I have nothing to do, so we can help the Supreme Emperor clear up his doubts. Clear up the confusion? The Emperor was puzzled. Rong Yu didn't say anything, but held Nan 11's shoulders and walked towards the yard. The Supreme Emperor was puzzled and asked concubine Xian beside him in a low voice, why do I have the illusion that they know more about Qing Huang than I do? Maybe it's because the regent's intelligence is better than ours. Concubine Xian guessed, don't forget, Your Majesty, we didn't come back for 2 years after you abdicated. We know almost nothing about what happened during these 2 years, but the regent, since Wang has accepted Fukang as his disciple, he naturally knows more than us. After all, Fukang is the shadow guard of the Dark Pavilion. Is that so? The Supreme Emperor pondered, as if this was the only way to explain it. But he always felt uncomfortable in his heart. It's just that the daughter has adopted a foster father, and even the son-in-law has become the apprentice of the regent. In this way, it always feels like the daughter and son-in-law have been snatched away by the regent of Dongling. The Supreme Emperor thought of how Qing Huang had called out the titles father and mother very naturally just now, and secretly thought that he had shouted the words father and mother so many times before he knew how to call them so familiarly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 529. The weather is hot in summer, and Her Majesty is pregnant, so she naturally has to stay in Changming Palace to rest. Before the main wife is canonized, the government affairs are naturally handled by the concubine. Of course, the ministers are opposed to this decision. The reason is that the harem is not allowed to interfere in politics. Unfortunately, Her Majesty shut them all up with one sentence. The harem is not allowed to interfere in politics is an excuse used by men to suppress women. It doesn't work with me. Chu Qing Huang sat on the dragon chair and looked coldly at the court officials in the hall. The fact is not that the harem is not allowed to interfere in politics, but that you think women should not interfere in politics, that women will disrupt the government, and that women are inferior to men in everything. In your perception, women should be gentle and virtuous, and support their husbands and children. Your Majesty is wise. All the civil and military officials in the court knelt down and shouted, not daring to let her continue, "Long live the Emperor!" Chu Qinghuang was silent for a moment, and said calmly, "I am pregnant during this period, and I can't attend the court every morning. After I have a child, I can't focus on court affairs, so I have an idea." The ministers were uneasy. "Next year in the autumn examination, we can add more women to the list. I will select female officials," Chu Qinghuang said. "Since the harem is not allowed to interfere in politics, I will select some female officials to assist. What do you think?" "Please think twice, Your Majesty. There has never been a precedent for women to serve as officials in Ziki. There has never been a precedent for women to serve as emperors in Ziki," Chu Qinghuang said lightly. "Do you think that I am not as good as you like as an empress?" The ministers were terrified. "We dare not." "Your Majesty is wise." Chu Qinghuang said, "You know what you are thinking, and I know it in my heart. If you don't want to add female officials to the court, let the emperor assist in politics. You can do it yourself." After speaking, he stood up and left the court. The ministers saw him off respectfully. Back to Changming Palace, the palace servants immediately got busy. The tea was served and the water was poured. Nuanuan Fukang followed her and helped her sit down on the couch, and put a pillow behind her. "Are you tired? Are you feeling uncomfortable?" Chu Qinghuang said leisurely, "No need to look like I'm facing a great enemy, I'm not feeling uncomfortable." Fukang frowned, "Do you really want to add female officials?" "No." Chu Qinghuang leaned on the couch, her eyebrows relaxed lazily. "Women as officials? It's easier said than done. I'm just scaring them." Fukang pursed his lips, "As long as it's something you want to do, no one can stop you." "Do you think I'm afraid of them?" Chu Qinghuang smiled, picked up the teacup and took a sip. "Since ancient times, men are superior to women and have become a concept engraved in the bones of the world. Not only men think so, but women in the world are also used to being bound. Even if I really want to give them status, most people don't dare to take that step easily." Fukang frowned. "Women are used to relying on men, obeying their fathers at home and their husbands after marriage, and following the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. How can they change?" Chu Qinghuang looked out the window and said indifferently, "I am not so great that I have to risk the world's disapproval and do thankless things." She can issue an order to put a shackle on men's marriages, stipulating that they can only have 1 wife and 2 concubines or 1 wife and 1 concubine, so as to improve the status of women, but such improvement is only relative and limited. Women in the world may be grateful for such rules and thank her, the Queen, for fighting for the status for women. But coming out to show their faces is not something that women can decide for themselves. No matter how their status is improved, they are still controlled by their fathers and brothers at home, and they have to listen to their parents' arrangements and cannot make their own decisions. If the order is issued and no one dares to try, what is the point? Besides, not only in Ziki, there are very few examples of women being emperors in all countries. Even if I stipulate that women can be officials now, when the next emperor ascends the throne, everything will still return to the normal state of men being superior to women." Chu Qinghuang looked at Fukang. "Do you understand what I mean?" "I understand." Fukang sat down beside her and nodded slowly, "but I think that women being emperors can continue." Chu Qinghuang raised an eyebrow. "Do you mean to let our daughter inherit the throne?" Fukang nodded. Nuan is so powerful, the daughter we give birth to should also be very powerful. Since the world always adheres to the doctrine of men being superior to women, let their daughter become the most noble person in the world. In this way, all men must submit to her feet, and no one dares to restrain her with doctrine. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, Tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 530. Chu Qing Huang propped up her chin and seriously considered the feasibility of this matter. Don't say it, maybe it's really possible. Facts have proved that women can also do what men can do. Moreover, she is already the queen, and the ministers of Ziki also accepted that a woman can be emperor. In this case, let this matter continue naturally and let Ziki become the only country in the world officially ruled by the queen. Chu Qing Huang smiled and turned to look at Fukang. I didn't expect your idea to be so bold. Fukang stretched out his hand to hold her in his arms. Actually, I'm worried that my son will be too stupid and ruin your career. Chu Qing Huang was silent for a moment. If the son is dull, the daughter must be powerful? What if they are all stupid? Would you like to sleep for a while? Fukang's eyes fell on her face. The imperial doctor said that you need to get more rest and don't go to court starting tomorrow. We will talk about it in 2 months. Chu Qing Huang said, well, you go and bring all the memorials here, you approve them, and I'll sit here with you. Fukang nodded. You can also give me some pointers by the way. Yuan Bao came in with a basin of ice cubes and placed them in the inner hall to cool off the heat. Jinlan and Minjiao carried several plates of fresh fruits and put them on the small table for Her Majesty the Queen to take. Chu Qing Huang looked at the bright sun outside the window. Her eyes were delicate, and she suddenly felt that it was good to be a pampered queen. Putting aside the important national affairs that she had to worry about every day, this treatment was really first class. There are so many people around her who are taking good care of her. She can eat whatever she wants and do whatever she wants. As long as she has the ability and courage, no one dares to dissent from her. On the other hand, the princesses of the Ziki royal family in the past generations, regardless of their concubines, were not very famous after leaving the palace. Most of them stayed at home to support their husbands and raise their children, and were the matrons of the family. There seemed to be no fundamental difference from the noble ladies of the aristocratic families. Chu Qing Huang caressed her lower abdomen. If the first child is a daughter, then she should be made the crown princess and be raised according to the standards of a prince. If she does not want to be a queen when she grows up, or is really unworthy of the education, then respect her wishes. Even the civil and military ministers of the Manchu dynasty of Ziki would not have imagined that a few casual chats between Her Majesty the Queen and the imperial concubine would directly determine the fate of successive empresses in Ziki's future. If they knew it was Master Fukang who suggested this, they would cut him into pieces overnight and sink him in the pond to feed the fish at any cost. Of course, this is a later story. The Queen's pregnancy was a happy event, and the ministers did not know whether they understood the hardship of a woman's pregnancy, or were frightened by what Her Majesty the Queen said in the court, and then directly acquiesced to the decision of the Queen's husband to assist the government. The memorial was reviewed by the Emperor's husband, and the Emperor's husband was asked for instructions on government affairs. It was not convenient for the ministers to go directly to Changming Palace to meet the saint. They were worried about disturbing His Majesty during the pregnancy, so the imperial study room was involved in government affairs that required the Emperor's husband to make decisions. Go to Changming Palace to ask for instructions. So Chu Suans, Wen Zhan, and Qi Hong became regular visitors to Changming Palace. Of course, they would not enter the palace directly, but would just stand outside and wait. When Fukang saw them coming, he would choose a suitable time to go to the imperial study room to listen to the minister's discussion, and then state the contents of the discussion to Chu Qing Huang when he came back. Every morning and evening when the imperial physician came to take pulse, Fukang would be by his side. When Her Majesty the Queen eats, her husband will be by her side to personally serve and take care of her. When His Majesty goes to bed at night, Fukang must stay close to him. Therefore, there is not much suitable time, that is, during the time when His Majesty takes a nap after lunch, Fukang will ask Jinlan and Minjiao to keep an eye on His Majesty while he takes the time to deal with government affairs. The days passed like this, full and busy, and it was July in a flash. July is the most lively month in the history of Ziki. Kings from various countries arrive one after another, and there is a sense of kings gathering together. On July 20th, the Emperor of Zhou dynasty arrived in Ziki with a mighty ceremonial guard. Chu Qinghuang ordered the Ministry of Rites to entertain him grandly. After the palace banquet, the Emperor of Zhou dynasty took his envoys and moved into another courtyard. The Emperor, who had abdicated for 2 years, suddenly felt a lot of pressure. After seeing Rongyu and Nan 11, the middle-aged emperor of the Zhou dynasty respectfully called him uncle and aunt, which instantly evoked his memory of the glorious legend of the regent of the Zhou dynasty during the years of civil strife in Ziki. The supreme emperor lamented that time flies. Rongyu was not only the legendary regent of Dongling, but also the most legendary god of war in the Zhou dynasty before becoming the regent of Dongling. So many years have passed, and after so many years, what was once the 9 kingdoms has become the current 4 kingdoms. The destruction of the powerful northern border officially announced the beginning of the 4 kingdoms. In the final analysis, Rongyu played the most critical and decisive role in the formation of the current situation.